So I'd like to start with a confession. I hate the challenge I'm about to give to you. It is one that I do not enjoy, but have found the most valuable. The reason I'm giving you this advice, which I hate, is because it has been at the center of everything in my life that has given me pride and satisfaction and advancement. And the times when I did not take this challenge were the times that are at the core of my deepest regrets. The challenge is transform. Not bet big, not set bigger goals or make incremental progress, but fundamentally disrupt yourself. Now, I am the last person who would expect to be standing on this stage and giving you this advice. In fact, just a few months ago, I was guest lecturing at a business school in Madrid, and a student asked me a question that I did not expect. She asked me to describe my younger self in 3 words and my current self in 3 words. My younger self, timid, perfectionist, dreamer. And my current self, collaborative, tenacious, dreamer. Now, that transformation is the summary transformation of my entire life, and one that came from a very unexpected source, my career in tech. I started my career in the earliest years of the internet, working directly for Jeff Bezos during the foundational years of that company's growth. I was there when we launched new product categories beyond books for the very first time. I was at his side when he launched Prime and Super Saver shipping, ideas at the time that were so crazy that our board was considering bringing in a professional CEO because they weren't sure that was going to work out. I was there when he founded what became Amazon Web Services and changed the scaffolding upon which the entire internet is built. And I was at his side when he founded Blue Origin and set his sights on outer space. Now, I went to graduate school and I moved on from that, where Jeff had really taught me to be willing to be misunderstood for long periods of time as an entrepreneur. And then I found myself at Google, where I spent 12 years during some of the most innovative and explosive growth of that company's history. I was there in my first week. We launched Calendar and all the products that are part of running our daily lives today. I was also there for the revolutions of mobile and artificial intelligence. I learned from our co-founder, Larry Page, to have a healthy disregard for what others consider impossible. Now, this education did something that I didn't expect. What I saw modeled at work, I sort of subconsciously started applying into my personal life. I started making decisions and taking bigger risks and disrupting and transforming myself, not only in my work and my career progression, but in my life. And extraordinary things started happening. And I realized something really important. These seemingly super performers that I was working for were not gifted with some rarefied DNA or some bravery or stroke of luck that isn't available to the rest of us. There was a pattern. There was a pattern to the way that they took risks, the way that they managed their portfolios, and it was replicable by us normal people. That playbook is what I want to give you today. I want to show you not only that you have the opportunity, but the responsibility to participate in creating the future. We have an opportunity now where the future is this malleable state, and I want you to lean in and claim your piece of that. Now, I learned this principle from Sergey Brin, who really built the scaffolding of Google's innovation system upon an economics principle. This principle was called the golden ratio. The golden ratio, as described by economists, is really about the allocation ratio for organizations that withstand the test of time. Imagine a pyramid. The bottom layer of that pyramid is called core. This is what we're really good at right now. This is how you earn your paycheck. This is your reputation, the foundation of all of your relationships. The second layer of this pyramid is the adjacent. This is where we're extending our current skill sets into new offerings, and we're learning line upon line. Think of your core as a path up a steep hill, where each step is visible in front of you. It takes some effort, but we can measure our progress in real time. Imagine the adjacent being like a switchback trail up a mountain. Effortful, we can't always see the end from the beginning, but our elevation change tells us we're making progress. Now, the last part of this pyramid is the part that most never attempt. This is the transformational. The transformational is where the future is built. There is no map and no precedent. And this is what changes everything. Because there are 2 reasons This is called the golden ratio. The first is the allocation within the pyramid. We first have our core base is about 70% of our time, talents, and resources are dedicated to that. This is how we earn our paycheck. This is how we build line upon line in our knowledge and our reputation and expertise. The middle, adjacent, is about 20%. We add 20% effort to learning new things, deepening our skill set, expanding our understanding. The 10% is just the top. Transformational is just the top 10%, but many people don't explore this fully. They're afraid of it because the rules in this top 10% are completely different than what makes you successful in the core and the adjacent zones. This nuance is not negotiable. This is the entire game. So my presentation is going to teach you how to navigate the transformational space. What happens inevitably over time is that this allocation pyramid flips upside down. The second reason this is called the golden ratio is because inevitably, whether we like it or not, the pyramid inverts. If we are not investing in the top 10% transformational, we will be disrupted in the future. It will happen whether we like it or not, but we can decide if we're in the driver's seat or in the back seat when it happens. What I'm about to show you in this playbook allows you to decide when the pyramid flips on you. You can do it proactively and purposely in a way that feels meaningful and empowering versus like a victim of decisions that someone else is making. To illustrate this point, I would like you to imagine, please, a starting line. There are two rules in the transformational space that do not apply in the same way as core and adjacent, and the first is where we begin. Most of us are used to setting goals starting from today. This is my current skill set, maybe my math abilities, so I'm going to take the next advanced class above that, go on to graduate school, do a PhD, and progress. The transformational space requires the opposite methodology. We need to start from a future desired state and engineer backwards. Now, this is not a nuance. This is the entire game. Starting from this future desired state allows us to engineer what is not currently possible. Whereas if we're optimizing for our current capabilities, we have a ceiling built in. We can only make incremental progress. The second rule of transformation is that progress is not linear. Most of us in our core skill sets are used to progressing line upon line. If we graph it on an XY axis, like every good CFO asks us to, we can see a general trend of up and to the right. We're improving day over day in our skill set. However, the transformational does not function like this. The transformational, when charted on an XY axis, looks a lot like chaos. However, if we shift that graph into the three-dimensional, we can actually see a pattern emerge. Through experimentation and trying new things and expanding our skills, we go through patterns where we are not just kind of spinning in circles and through experimentation coming back to where we are armed with new knowledge, new experience, new muscles that we did not have before. So when we revolve through these experimentation cycles, we actually level up. And what happens is that we begin what I call the helical ascent. Imagine the staircase inside of a lighthouse where it's steep and it's dark and every step is a blind turn, but we're progressing towards the light. This is where the only ROI that actually matters is our speed of learning, not the performance itself. So with those two rules in mind, I'd like to introduce you to 4 characteristics and habits that we can take today that transform this into meaningful progress every day. So I have spent my career with super performers of every possible category. Decades in Silicon Valley, but now I work with athletes, scientists, people at the top of their game who are trying to invent a future that others think is impossible. The first characteristic of this group of people is humility, and that might not be the first word that comes to mind when you think of these super performers. So to illustrate this, I'd like to take you to Silicon Valley, probably the last place you thought I would bring you in this category of humility, and really show you what this looks like. So humility, for many of us, is being very deferential to other experts around us. That's what got us mentors and colleagues. It's very collaborative work in our core. However, in the transformational space, we need to really be challenged by the things around us that we don't yet understand. And as we progress in our expertise, inevitably, once you master something, you're asked to lead it. Once you've collaborated on a bigger skill, you're asked to really teach it to others. And inevitably, in this progression, you end up being the smartest person in every room. You're leading the teams, you're calling the shots, you're managing the decisions. But if you want to transform into the next level of leadership, there's a ceiling on your progress this way. So Jeff Bezos, who I worked for in 2002, that same year, he created a full-time role called the Shadow. And the Shadow's job was to be at his side at all times and play the challenger. He was supposed to be the devil's advocate and make sure that Jeff didn't start to believe that all his ideas were good and all his jokes were funny. That's a terrifying job, I have to tell you right now. But Jeff did so because he knew that he would be self-limiting without somebody consistently challenging him. The second example is also unlikely in the humility category, which is Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs had a personal obsession of hiring cross-disciplinarily. He would hire poets and playwrights and historians onto deeply technical teams, knowing that they would ask completely different questions and inspire a different perspective. So many of us don't have the privilege of being able to hire someone to follow us around full-time and play the challenger. However, you do have trusted people in your circle that you can invite explicitly to help you see things. The second of these 4 principles is a more expected one: intelligence. Yes, transformational people are hyper-intelligent, and that shows up in the expected ways in their core offerings. So they've become an expert in their field through university and study and dedication and hard work. But I would argue that when you want to move into the transformational space, you have to step out of your domain expertise. You have to invite opportunity for depth of thought around questions you cannot answer. So 2 examples from science. The first is Marie Curie. She had 2 PhDs in chemistry and physics at a time when women in her home country of Poland were banned from university entirely. She was awarded 2 Nobel Prizes for her discovery of radiology, and she accredits this discovery to the fact that she had 2 cross-disciplinary expertise. But not just that. Her notebooks, which are still radioactive today, are not full of her knowledge and ideas and proposals. They're full of questions. Similarly, Leonardo da Vinci was inspired similarly. His discoveries within anatomy were inspired by his studies of biology. His anatomical formulas were multifaceted because of his cross-disciplinary skills. So I invite you to absorb this into your practice by setting aside at least 30 minutes this week where you can be inspired by something, sitting with a question you are far from being able to answer and being inspired by something around you. The third of these categories is curiosity. Curiosity can show up in many different ways. It's an expected trait of super performers and those who live in the transformational space. But this is really about not only just sitting with those questions, but inviting new stimulus into your life. As we go through our day-to-day, we see the same people and we read the same things, and we're exposed to people who agree with our ideals and our philosophies and have similar backgrounds. But we really need to curate and engineer a system where that is not accidental, where exposure to new ideas is not accidental, where we're really being able to be exposed to these ideas with frequency by design. So when I worked for Eric Schmidt for 10 years while at Google, his role as CEO took us all over the world, almost a different country every week. And in each country we were in, we would host a dinner with people whose expertise was far different from our own. The goal of those conversations was not just to glean their knowledge, but to challenge our own assumptions, to look at their networks, their approach, and the questions they were asking and allow that to inform our own work. So perhaps you can invite into your life a dinner table conversation where you gather people who think very differently from you. And the fourth and final of these 4 characteristics is really about tenacity. This is where we show up time and time again and challenge ourselves by doing very difficult things. So tenacity is where we look for opportunities to do something that will stretch the confines of our current abilities. If we look into sports, we think of Muhammad Ali, who is a championship, world champion heavyweight boxer. A journalist once asked him about his workout routine, and he said, for example, how many sit-ups do you do? And Muhammad Ali said, about 50. The journalist thought that was clearly wrong, and he said, well, I only start counting once it hurts. For him, the reps before that would maintain his current strength and abilities, but it was only the reps after that, when he was approaching the point of failure, that his skills improved and his muscles densened. Now, my favorite example of engineered tenacity is American innovator Sarah Blakely. Sarah Blakely was just inducted into the Innovators Hall of Fame last week, and Sarah had a habit in her childhood dinner table where her dad would ask her and her brother every day, "What did you fail at?" And if they didn't have an answer, her dad would be very disappointed. And if they had a spectacular failure, it would earn a high five. She and her brother started to see failure not as a disappointment, but as a success metric because they were trying hard things. They were being brave and they were showing up for themselves and the goals that really mattered. So Sarah used that muscle very explicitly with her invention, Spanx. She went to manufacturers for 2 full years before anyone would even attempt to make it because they thought her idea was crazy. She bootstrapped the company with $5,000 of her own savings and then sold it 2 decades later for $1.2 billion. That is engineered tenacity built over a deep dinner table conversation. So imagine what you can do with the same practice. Now, neuroscience shows us how this challenge that I admitted I hate is tolerable over time. So neuroscientists have discovered a region of the brain called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, or AMCC for short, because that's very hard to say. So the AMCC is the region of the brain that is your tenacity architecture. So this is the part that literally increases in density and size to one particular stimulus, willingly doing hard things you would rather avoid. Not things forced on you, but things of your choosing because the effort will be worth the result in the long run. Now, the AMCC's growth over time requires multiple reps. It's entering that room where you're not the expert, asking the question you think might be stupid, exploring an expertise or a relationship or a conversation outside your domain that might expose your vulnerabilities. But every time you do so, it is an AMCC rep, and you get stronger, and the effort becomes even more meaningful. So I want to bring you back to that classroom in Madrid, to that question about my younger self. I now look at her as that timid perfectionist dreamer with kinder eyes. That was really the starting line, not a failure. It was an opportunity for growth. And I've seen the way that she was really nurtured into this environment where my mentors really Miyagi'd me and taught me this framework. And I feel a responsibility now. My personal mission is to pay this forward, to democratize success and empower you to be able to create a meaningful and purposeful future. What I do not want is a handful of people on the other side of the world making decisions that decide our fate. We need all of us leaning in and taking the action ourselves and creating a very purposeful future. They don't have a rarefied DNA that you don't have, or a stroke of luck, or a skill set that is unapproachable. Through systematic efforts, you can build the same muscles and invent the future. So bet on yourself, build it, and start today.